Welcome to science class. Today, my friends, we begin a brand new course in studying the natural world. This time, it's biology. Biology, if you didn't know, is the study of life. All life. Every species, every interaction, every environment, and at every level of the living organism, from its own internal chemistry down to the molecular level, all the way up to the individual organism, and how that individual or an entire population impacts its immediate area or even the planet. That's a lot of stuff. Yeah, well, living things are complicated. To be frank, biology is almost too general of a term. If you talk to a professional biologist and ask them, so do you study all life? They'll say, well, no, I only study a few particular species. Or their area of study will be the environment and how it impacts species. Farmers are biologists, you could argue. Somebody who runs a greenhouse is a kind of biologist, you could argue. So is a doctor, so is a veterinarian. We will hit a lot of different subject areas throughout this course. Sadly, we won't be able to do most of these subject areas justice. That would just take way too much time. You take a single chapter in a biology textbook on, say, evolution. Well, you could take an entire semester in college on that, or even have your entire major and career focus on that. Our goal here is not to make you an expert in one area. I want to expose you to all of the ways in which biology impacts your life, and there are quite a lot of them. So, with that being said, let's get started. For my money, biology is the most important human study. Now, I just got done ranting about how biology isn't even a single thing, it's all kinds of things rolled into one. Yeah, okay, I get it. But really, if humanity had to theoretically start over on this planet or another planet, what would be the most important knowledge we could take with? Math? That's not going to put food into people's mouths. What else would be essential to our starting over? It has to be biology. I mean, you are a living thing, for crying out loud. Technology can be applied in countless ways to make our lives better. But if we're talking about improving the well-being of people, who, after all, are animals, then you can see that studying life is the most direct route to maximizing our own benefits. For this introduction video, we're going to start with the absolute basics, the essentials of living things. Not the essentials for living things, but what qualifies something as alive. Life is weird. Like, I am definitely alive. That's pretty obvious. But a rock? That's definitely not alive. A tree? That is most certainly alive. A unicellular bacterium? That thing is totally alive. A river? Not alive at all. What about a virus? Is that alive? Viruses are complex. They have DNA, they multiply, they evolve, they have a definite structure and function to them, they interact with living things. But no, they're not alive. Which is weird because a virus isn't merely a chemical, it's way more complicated than that. How about a seed? Seeds don't do anything at all until they are triggered to. So does life spring from a seed, or is the seed alive? We have about 8 different things that qualify something as alive. Let's go over them. The biggest factor is the cell. All living things are composed of one or more cells. A cell can be described as a collection of living matter enclosed in a barrier which separates it from its surroundings. As any chemist would gleefully tell you, and I'll agree, life is really just a series of chemical reactions. Those chemical reactions happen to take place inside of cells. You might be thinking, well, that sounds reductionist, how dare you? Well, prove me wrong then. Every single thing that you do is a result of a chemical reaction. We can watch your most complex and intimate thoughts light up on a brain scanner. Those thoughts don't arise from some mysterious unknown force. It's billions of neurons working together. And those thoughts aren't even necessarily yours. We know through studying the gut bacteria, cells that are not human cells but are inside of your body, that those bacteria thrive off of junk food and actually signal chemically to your brain many of the cravings for sugary foods. So when you just have to drink a Mountain Dew, you might not even have made that decision. Back to the cell. I want you to really keep this idea in mind as we go forward. Everything you do, your cells also do. These 8 characteristics of living things, your individual cells do all of them, or your doing of them arises from your cells. In fact, the vast majority of this course, we will be studying events going on at the cellular level, because that's where activity is most crucial. Now, in your body, you have specialized cells. Metazoans is a term that just means animals. Specifically, humans are eumetazoans, or true animals. And even more specifically, we are tripoblastic, meaning we form embryologically from 3 different, what we call germ layers. This is what makes our internal anatomy complex, with all kinds of tissue. Muscle tissue, fat tissue, connective tissue, blood, nervous tissue, and more. So under the microscope, all of our cells in these different areas look different. Simpler animals, like jellyfishes and anemones, are dipoblastic. They arise from just 2 germ layers. The porifera, or sponges, are the simplest of any animal, and they only have 1 kind of cell. If you shred a sponge by pushing its body through a screen, those cells will recolonize again into a new sponge. They can do that because they are simple enough to. Now, unicellular organisms, which by far dominate the entire planet, don't specialize. They can't. They're just 1 cell. That 1 cell has to be able to carry out all of the functions to maintain life, which, being a single cell, makes that task fairly manageable. The biggest thing that works against unicellular organisms is that they can't adjust to their environment quite like larger organisms can. Next comes reproduction. All organisms produce new organisms through reproduction. But reproduction is so complicated. I could easily do 1 or 2 entire videos on reproduction, and maybe in the future I will, but I'll try to be brief here. In general, there are 2 kinds of reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves the fusion of 2 cells from 2 separate individuals into the first cell of a new organism. Asexual reproduction occurs when a single parent produces an offspring that is genetically identical to it. There are 2 forms of asexual reproduction. Individual cells carry out binary fission. This is how bacteria multiply. But it's also how you and I and every organism grows. You start off as 1 cell. That cell made a copy of itself, and so on and so forth, and here you are. The fusion of 2 cells only occurs once in your life. Also, each individual cell in your body is a living thing. They all meet the criteria for life individually. And if we took any cell out from your body and maintained the right conditions for it, it could continue living and growing and dividing without you. So would that cluster of cells in a petri dish be you? Would there be 2 of you? Or does it need consciousness to be you? Anyways, the other kind of asexual reproduction is budding. Some animals do this. A piece of the animal's body simply pinches off and an entire organism grows from it. That organism will be genetically identical to its parent, but the lines of all this get blurred. Some very complex animals are capable of parthenogenesis, reproduction without sex. Whiptail lizards can give birth to offspring without ever having sex. Drone bees are born from eggs that were never fertilized by sperm, so drone bees only have half the DNA that the queen does. As people, we obsessively categorize things. No, there can only be 1 kind of this and 2 kinds of that. Well, Science tells us that things don't actually fit nicely into imaginary boxes. Instead of resisting that knowledge, I say we embrace it. Next up, living things are based on a universal genetic code. That is to say, every living cell has DNA inside of it. DNA contains the information to build proteins, which allows cells to function. All life on the planet uses the same DNA blueprint: 4 nucleotide base pairs: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Another nucleotide, uracil, is part of the protein synthesis process and makes up RNA, the sister molecule of DNA. But we won't worry about that for right now. The universality of DNA is really amazing. More so than anything, it shows us how all life on Earth is interconnected. Life isn't created, it's evolved. Humans, dogs, tulips, bacteria, we're not made separately for their own purposes. We're all derived from common beginnings, and that can be traced through our DNA. The fourth characteristic of living things is that they grow and develop. Unicellular organisms only develop by growing slightly larger, not much of a transformation. For multicellular organisms, growth and development refers mainly to differentiation, which is the process of cell specialization as we go from one cell to many. So, for the record, I'm going to be extremely biased towards animals in this biology class, because I'm not much of an expert in plants, but also because they're just more familiar to us. Animals, that is. So, for most animals, specialization occurs during embryonic development. When you are born, every kind of tissue and organ is in place. Other animals undergo radical transformations after their embryological phase, such as the metamorphosis of a caterpillar or a tadpole. Now, none of this would be possible without raw materials and energy. Living things require a constant supply of oxygen, water, and other nutrients. What we do with those raw materials is we break them down and build them into living tissue. We call that metabolism, the collection of chemical reactions that maintain life. Think about this. If you have a dog, and that dog eats the same dog food its whole life, that means that that dog is made out of dog food and water, and that's it. Think of nutrients like Lego bricks. I could disassemble a Lego boat and build a Lego house out of it. No problem. Raw materials can be used to make anything, and our bodies do that with the molecules of our food. Now, some organisms have really different metabolisms. The archaea, sometimes called extremophiles, are unicellular organisms. They're not bacteria, not even close. And they live in acid pools, boiling water, deep within mud volcanoes on the bottom of the ocean, in crazy places. They derive energy and get nutrients from completely inorganic sources like sulfur compounds. Next up, living things respond to the environment. A response can be just about anything: searching for food, interacting with other organisms, migrating in response to weather. These are all examples. The signal which triggers a response is called a stimulus. Even unicellular organisms can have extremely dramatic responses to their environment. There's a type of unicellular amoeba that will form a supercluster of thousands of individuals, which then patrols around as if it's multicellular. Then it flattens out, releases spores, which is its way of reproducing, dies, and new individuals start the life cycle all over again. The way organisms respond to their environment is another kind of specialization. We say that organisms have adaptations to allow them to survive. This is actually what the phrase survival of the fittest, which Darwin never said, actually means: how well an organism fits into its environment. Adapting to the environment is an organism's way of maintaining a stable internal environment, the next characteristic of living things. Remember, the cell is separate from its surroundings. Homeostasis is a term that means to maintain a stable internal environment. Internal as well as external stimuli help organisms maintain stability. The feeling of hunger or thirst, the way plants curve their stems or trunks to remain upright, that crazy thing the amoeba does. All of these are in an effort to maintain conditions inside the cell. Your individual cells trigger your body to meet their needs through intercellular communication, usually through hormones. Finally, living things evolve. The concept of species is not rigid, it changes over time. We will have an entire video series devoted to evolution, but the most basic understanding of it is that the organisms you see today evolved from different species over millions upon millions of years. These gradual changes are what lead to the rich diversity of life on the planet. But most of the life has gone extinct. For every one of the millions of different species that are alive today, perhaps as many as 1,000 have gone extinct in the distant past. Conditions on our planet change, sometimes drastically. Just ask them. Only some organisms survive through those changes, and their descendants branch out and diversify. Okay, so there is our introduction. Not so bad. Next time, we are going to take a look at what living things are made of, what atoms and molecules make up a living thing. Should be fun. Thanks for watching.